Wow, we have a journey of 10 weeks to go, and this is just the seventh. For all those that have been part of this success story in the past six editions and this seventh, I want to congratulate you for learning so much from this platform. And that, like we do have every week in the last 6 weeks, we are on this seventh edition, and I'm very glad to introduce to you our August speaker for today, in person of Dr. Professor Bernard Obeng Botenk. So,
Popola, this doctor professor you are adding to my name.
so yes, I know your what. It may not
Mm,
be in the academic field, but in the field of tech, in the Microsoft terrain,
mm.
you are a professor of high standard. So I want to welcome you on board for this session. Before we move ahead, let me quickly introduce uh, our yes, our partners. I want to thank our partners, Microsoft, Convenant Technology, Jerry Computer Solution, Enterprise DNA, for giving us this support. Without them, we couldn't have gone so far on this. And yes, I also need to introduce this special guest you may not be aware of, and his name, like I mentioned, is what? Bernard Obeng Botenk. He lives in Ghana and is a Microsoft certified professional. So let me quickly read out to his profile. Bernard Obeng is a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional (MVP), Microsoft Certified Trainer (MCT), Advanced Financial Modeler (AFM), and data analyst with over 10 years work experience in banking, insurance, and business development. Bernard is skilled in business analytics, dashboards, and building financial models for budgeting, business valuation, scenario planning, and investment. He is certified in business analytics, new venture financing, and risk modeling. From Wharton, he holds the Advanced Financial Modeler certification of the Financial Modeling Institute, Canada, and the Financial Modeling and Valuation Analyst, FMVA, from the Corporate Finance Institute, Canada. He is founder of Finex Skills Hub, which you can see the website, and co-founder of Business Evolution Systems and Training Limited. The website is also there. It provides consultant services for SMEs and startups, and startups, and assisting in financial modeling, business planning, and research. In addition, let me tell you, Bernard is highly resourceful. I have listened, I have watched, I have been part of his presentations. My listeners, I'm very happy to have him in our midst. I'm very, very sure you'll be happy that at the end of this session, you will have added so much to the volume of what you know. Uh, I have this great honor to invite Bernard on board, where I will be discussing on analyzing data with Power Pivot for the next 1 hour. My guest, you are welcome aboard. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Popola. Thrilled by the profile. We thank God for how far He's brought us. So we are here today to get some insights on how you can use one of the most important BI tools in Microsoft Excel. You probably have seen it, but you may not have paid attention to it. So in the next 1 hour, our goal is to learn how we can work smart, okay, and analyze data using Microsoft's Power Pivot. So I'm going to share my screen and give you a little introduction on Microsoft Power Pivot. So let me share my screen. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see it. So I'll be at the background.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay, so just to bring all of us home, I think it will be good to have a general idea on how we analyze data in Microsoft Excel. So this little schema I have put together is to bring everybody home at the same level, and then we can appreciate what Power Pivot does in the process. So if you're okay with how data comes into Excel, it comes from different sources. So we have from folders, online, we have database systems. Okay. So Excel has a dedicated tool to extract and then get the information. Okay. Now, that process involves cleaning, transforming, and shaping the data. Okay. And it is done by Power Query. So today we're not going to talk about Power Query, but it is important you know that in most cases, this is the first step that we do. That is getting the data, transforming it, and shaping it. Now, you've transformed your data. When you are dealing with multiple tables, okay, sometimes it is important you model the data. So basically, you are connecting the various tables through what we call common relationships. So what you seek to do is to get one compact form or database, okay, that you can call all analysis from. So example, if you want to analyze sales by product and the product register is somewhere else different from your sales record, you can model it and connect. Now, Power Pivot comes in here. So Power Pivot allows us to connect using multiple tables, create a data model out of this. Now, beyond connecting and creating a data model, you need to analyze the data. So here, you need to calculate measures. You need to create insights. Okay, so in the data model world, we have DAX, which is data analysis expressions, which is native in Power BI and also Excel as well. Now, to do this or create these DAX calculations, you have to use Power Pivot as well. Okay. Now, beyond DAX, Power Pivot also enables us to use what we call cube functions. I'll touch on that later. Okay. So now you see that Power Pivot has come in twice so far, helping us model, helping us analyze. Then when we are done, we can summarize and then we can visualize our insights, right? Using pivot tables and charts and all that. So generally, this is how we analyze data in Microsoft Excel. I just want to show you how important Power Pivot is. Now, what is Power Pivot? So we call it Excel's own self-service business intelligence tool. Okay, if you have used SQL Server before and all the things that it can do, the good thing is that it has been brought into Excel. So a lot of the things that you can do with SQL Server, Power Pivot can do similar. Okay, there are three key advantages you get using Power Pivot to analyze data. The first one is that it helps you analyze data from multiple tables. I've mentioned that already. Okay, so back in the days, you had one pivot table, one data source, and if you have many, you have to do VLOOKUP and all those things. Okay, that is a stretch. But with Power Pivot, you can put all these tables together and then just get your analysis done. Secondly, it helps us create what we call powerful DAX calculations. Okay, so data analysis expressions is available in Power BI. In Excel, Power Pivot makes it available too. So all the year-to-date calculations and the tables and all those things can be created here. The other advantage you also have is that it gives you the ability to create cube functions. Okay, where if you're an accountant or finance and you want to lay out your report in a certain way, still maintaining connection to your slices, then data model in Power Pivot is your best bet. Now, one important advantage of Power Pivot is if you look at the capacity of Excel, it just has about a million over rows, right? But if you are using Power Pivot, you can connect and store data in a compact form beyond Excel's capacity. So I can bring in 10 million rows of data, okay, and model it and then use pivot table to take snippets of it and then create my dashboards. Okay, the data model in Power Pivot allows you to hold the huge volume of data beyond Excel's capacity. So there are more advantages, but these are the three takeaways, and this is why Power Pivot is very important. Okay, now let's compare how we used to analyze data in the days. Okay, pivot table has been around for a very long time. Okay, So in 2009, 2010, Power Pivot was introduced into the system. Okay, it came as an add-in, and then it went into the main Excel in 2016 onwards. But we had one data source. Okay, when we want to analyze data, we take our table, okay, and then we go straight to the pivot table, which allows us to summarize, and then we can now analyze and visualize. Okay, but it didn't solve the problem. What if I had multiple registers? Okay, what if I have my product name somewhere else, and then the table I am analyzing only has product IDs? So that is where Power Pivot came in. So I can have transactions as one table, I can have my products as one table, I can have my store locations as one table. Okay. So what Power Pivot does is that it creates a data model out of these tables, okay, through a relationship, as I said, giving you one compact source. Okay, so from here, you can load to the pivot table. So this is more like a pivot table that is on steroids, okay, because it's coming from the data model. You have different advantages. Okay, so then you can analyze and visualize. So fairly, this is the difference using Power Pivot, and see the gap on the left side and the role that Power Pivot is playing here. So what we want to do is I want you to follow along. So I have made available this link. If you watch the video and you want to practice along, you can use this link to come along. We want to use this data to work out some case studies. So I'll leave it on the screen for some seconds. So tinyurl.com forward slash Niger NJA Finex. Okay, so you can come along and then you can practice. So if you have any questions, you can leave it in there and then we would touch it as we go. So I'm going to switch over to Excel so that we can get hands on and then see some of the advantages here. Okay, so we're going to use the sales data, right? So this is sales data of an e-commerce shop, and it records the order and delivery date, the delivery mode. So we'll take it as a typical store, receiving orders from different stores, okay? And then we record the unit costs, quantity, the selling price, and the discount given, okay? Now you will notice that in here, I have only the customer ID in my record. Okay. Then I also have a column containing city and I have a column for product ID. Now, the key question is that if I want to see the customer who bought this, right? In some database systems, the data is kept in what we call a normalized state. Okay, so it separates the details of, let's say, your key dimensions in different registers. So when we take customer ID and then we come to these registers, okay, you see that there's a special table that has details of each customer. So I have my customer name and the segment. Okay. For each store that we have, I have the country and the region. For each product, okay, I have the category, subcategory, product name, and so on. Okay. Now, the reason most database systems adopt this is to reduce what we call data redundancy. Okay, so we want to avoid a situation where, example, you have country Ghana repeating itself unnecessarily. So you have Ghana, Ghana throughout. When you do that and you bring that repetition of Ghana into your main records, you end up getting a very heavy file. Okay, so in most systems, the data is normalized. It separates the actual recording of the activity, okay, from the attributes or dimensions. Okay, so now that you get this picture, one key thing when you are using Power Pivot is it prefers getting data in a structured form. Okay, so the basic unit of data entry in Excel is a cell. Okay, but normally when we download data, we keep it in a range. A range is just a collection of cells. Okay, but in this way, it is not very useful. So what we do is we normally convert it into a table. Okay, to make it easier to do what we call structured referencing. So with structured referencing, with just a name, you can just call the content of the whole table. You see, when we go to Power Pivot is going to be looking at our data sets in columns. Okay, so it helps if it is in tables. So how do you insert a table? You go to insert, okay, standing in this data block, okay, and then you insert a table. One shortcut is Control T. Okay, so you can do Control T, and then it would ask you some few questions. Where's the data of your table and all that? My table has headers. It's very important to separate the header from the content, right? And then I'll click OK. Okay, so this is our first block. Now, in every organization, there's where we record the core activity of the business. Okay, so example, if you are selling, okay, when people come and buy from you, you record the sales activity. Okay, now where you record it, where you record the activity, is called the fact table. So in essence, what we have done here, okay, is convert the fact table into a table. So I'm going to name it transactions to reflect what it does. Okay, so that's how you name a table. Okay, by doing this, it means that if you are in any part of the workbook and then you transactions, the whole data set is highlighted. And of course, when we go to Power Pivot, is this name that is going to use to reference this data set. Okay, if you understand this, let's go to our lookup sheets. So here we are going to name this the same way. So Control T. Okay, so this is customers. Okay, and then I come here, Control T. This is for our stores. I come here, Control T, and this is for our products, right? Okay. So again, the whole idea is we now have a situation where if I have a customer ID here, it should be able to talk to this customer ID to give me the details of the customer that I'm analyzing. Okay. Now, as I said in the past, what we would have done is if I need to analyze on customer name or customer segment, we will come and do, let's say, a VLOOKUP, okay, and bring all those details here. Not necessary. If you are using Power Pivot and a data model, it's a better way to do this. So the first stage is we've converted into tables. Now let's load into Power Pivot. I have my Power Pivot here. In truth, when you come to your Excel, it may not be enabled. Okay, so it's an add-in. So what you need to do is you need to go through a certain process to enable it. Okay, so I'm going to file, okay, and then in my add-ins, okay, when you come here, you have Excel add-ins and Com add-ins. So I'll click go, okay, and then you see that Power Pivot is here if you are using 2016 onwards. Okay, so if it's not activated, it means this is off, and then I will click OK. Okay, when I do that, typically when you come here, you are not going to see the Power Pivot tab here. But how do you enable it? So what you need to do if it's not there is to come to data, okay, and then in the data tools group, you see this lemon cube. When you hover on it, you see go to Power Pivot window, right? And then when you click on it for the first time, that is if it is not enabled, okay, you get this pop-up, enable the data analysis add-in to use this feature. You hit enable, okay, and then it installs Power Pivot for you. Okay, so you can see that it has highlighted, it actually opened the window of Power Pivot. Okay, so this is how Power Pivot looks like. Okay, so when you close it out, you come back to your native Excel, right? So as I said, it becomes a tab here present for you to use. So you use manage to get in. You can create what we call measures. We'll come and do that very soon. Okay, you can also add a table to the data model using this method. Okay, so the reason we brought the tab here is that we have our tables ready and we want to load it into Power Pivot. Okay, so it's a very simple process. All you need to do is to stand in the table, any cell will do, okay, and then you just add to the data model. Okay, so let me see what is causing this. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, so I've loaded my first data here, which is my transactions table, right? And as you can see, it actually shows all the content of my data. Okay, it is similar to your Excel worksheet, but you see, the main thing here is that everything is read in columns, right? And Power Pivot sort of compresses it into metadata to make it easier for you on your storage. Okay, so my table has come in here. I'm going to close this, and then I'll go to my lookup tables. So the same method, I'll stand here, add this to the data model. Okay, so the whole idea is I'm bringing the, okay, something is interrupting this. Just a minute. Okay, so let's try adding this again. So we add this to the data model. Okay, now let me add the third one. I hope I won't get that interruption again. So I'll add this to the data model. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this work and then restart. So whatever is interrupting it. And this is the dashboard that we are going to use as guide, okay, to create our measures, right? So let me restart that case study. Okay, so this is still our customers table. This is our stores. Okay, so I come to Power Pivot and then I add this to the data model.
Hello, Bernard.
Hi, people.
Yeah, somebody asks if we can just show how you loaded the data again. Maybe somebody missed it out.
Okay, so I'm saying that once it has been converted into a table, okay, then you can just stand anywhere in the table and then add to the data model. Okay, so you just stand in there and then load it to the data model. Okay, so let me restart again. And then sometimes you do a lot of work and some things are in the background. Okay, so okay,
We are sorry
so
for disturbing you, please.
no, it's fine. It happens. So
Yeah, thank you.
we
Thank you.
have our stores here, and I'm going to convert this into the data model. So I'll come to Power Pivot. Okay, let me try the product one. Okay, I think this time around is going to work. Great. So I have transactions, I have customers, I have stores, and I have products, right? So if you appreciate the process that we went through, we converted our raw data into tables. Okay, so I have my first one here, transactions, and then I have customers here, I have my stores, and I have my product. So once you convert it into a table, then you activate your Power Pivot, and then you can add this to the data model. Now you realize that I've been toggling between my worksheet and the data model or Power Pivot. So if you want to go into Power Pivot, you can stand under the tab and then you use Manage. Okay, so Manage will bring you here. Okay, now you have two tabs, Home and Design. Okay, it serves its purpose. So under Home, the key thing that we are interested in is the data view. Okay, so in the data view, you see that you have a display of all the tables that you brought in here. Okay, it's my transactions, my customers, my stores, and my products, right? Now, when I go to the diagram view, which is next to the data view, I see all these displayed. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is where you store your original records. When somebody walks into the shop and comes to buy from you, you record it in the transactions. Okay. Now, when a customer enters for the first time or a customer comes into your shop, you profile the customer. So you take the customer's details, customer ID, customer name, and customer segment, you classify. This you do only once. Okay. So that when that customer comes to buy from you, right, to avoid data redundancy, in your sales record, you only put in the customer ID, right? So that is how you do this. The customer ID is only put in there so that when you want to analyze on your customer name or your customer segment, you can easily refer to this register of customer services. Okay, so note that. Same with stores. Let's say when you build a new store, okay, you have a register for the store city, the country, and then a region. Okay, so where the product was bought from, okay, you just need to include city in the transaction. Later, when you want to do any transaction, you can come and then connect it to the store's register and then fetch your country, your region, and all that. Okay, so that's how we are going to do this. And same with product. Now, as I mentioned, this table that records the original activity is called the fact table. Okay, and it mostly contains the value that we are after. If you're a data analyst, you are always after a value, okay, that is a measure or a calculation. That is total sales, total profit, um, average sales, and all those things. Those are what you are after. But your users are interested in perspective, dimension. Okay, so by city, by product, okay, by customer, top 10 customers, bottom five. All those insights that you want to give your customers or your user come from what we call dimension tables. Okay, so dimension table contain attributes, so customer name, customer segment. These give you, let's say, adjectives to create your dashboard in a more insightful way. Okay, so those tables are normally placed on top. So here I have customers, stores, products, right? So I can easily connect to any of these and then create any insights that I want. But they have to talk. And this is made possible with Power Pivot. So when it's like this, I place my fact table below and then my dimension tables around my fact table. If I here, I have only three, but if I had more and I surround my fact table, I have created what we call a star schema. Okay, so that is one. There's another one called snowflake, but for this purpose, our fact table is at the bottom or at the center, surrounded by dimension tables. Okay, so let's make the tables talk. Remember, we are in Power Pivot, we are creating a data model. So here, between customers and transactions, customer ID is our common column. Okay, this version here is representing the number of times the customer came to us to buy. This version here represents when we registered the customer once. Okay, so if you can buy 10 times from us, we record 10 times in the fact table. But if you want to do it once, after registration, we do it once. So we are going to connect the one to the many times we record this. So I'll do that. Okay, so you realize that it's created one too many, right? When we come here, same thinking with city. I'll come here and then we'll do that. Okay, and then I'm going to do my product ID. Okay, so I'll take this one and I'll connect it that way. Okay, so by doing this, you have made all the tables talk to each other. You avoid any VLOOKUP index match, okay, to let the tables give you data and all that. Okay, so we've done this in here. Now let's go to the data view. Let's go to the data view. So in the data view, we have our transactions, we have our customers, we have our stores, and then we have our products, right? Now, as I said, here we don't edit cells, we just work with columns. Now, with Power Pivot, you can create what we call calculated columns, right? So here, this is a column that didn't exist in your original data source, okay, but you want to create it. So if you look at our data sets, we have selling price, which is what each product is at, and then we have our quantity, okay. So if I want to calculate revenue, I need to create a column here to do that, okay. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to add that column, you step in the column, okay, and then you step in the formula bar, right, and then you type the name of the column, okay, and then you bring your colon, and then you proceed with an equal sign. Okay, so I want to multiply quantity by selling price for each row. We call this iteration. So you are taking each row, selling price and quantity, and then you are multiplying. So in Power Pivot, if you are starting the calculated column formula, you can pull the column headers with a square bracket. Okay, so here I'm multiplying my selling price times my quantity, right? So revenue is equal to selling price times quantity, and I'm going to press enter. So it will go through the calculation, and then it gives me my revenue. So what I've basically done is that I have introduced a column that didn't exist, okay, in my Power Pivot. That's one advantage of the Power Pivot. Now let's use the same method to calculate cost. Okay, so remember this is doing it for each row. Okay, it's not aggregating, it's just multiplying the rows. Okay, so here I introduce cost, I bring my column, okay, so costs again, I pull my quantity, and then I'll multiply this by my unit cost. Okay, I think I'll just give you some time to refresh. Okay, so we are calculating our cost. Great. So we now have our revenue and our cost here. So remember, we've gone through connecting multiple tables. I'm now showing you that in Power Pivot, you can also create columns, calculated columns that didn't exist in your source data, right? Okay, so we can now have our revenue, our cost. When I go to my diagram view, I've connected my tables here, okay? And I can now close and then go back to my native Excel to do my calculations. So I'm going to show you a little dashboard that you can generate from here. So, I mean, we are not going to build a dashboard in this session, probably in another session, but it's going to help us know what is possible, okay, when you are using the Power Pivots in Excel. So I have this dashboard. I like the dark mode dashboard. So it is the same data set, as you can see, the same data set. Okay. Now, if you look at the dashboard, there are some key calculations in there: revenue, cost, profit margin. Okay. As I mentioned, if you're a data analyst, you are always after values. Okay, that's your preoccupation. Okay, when you are answering questions, you answer most likely with numbers. Okay, now if you calculate the numbers and somebody is asking you, can you give me this number by month? By month can now take revenue and then slice it, okay, by month. Okay, so whatever you are bringing here, as I mentioned, is going to come from a dimension table. Okay, so key to all our calculations are what we call measures. So this is a measure, this is a measure, this is a measure, and so on. For measures, you can use it across your report. So you can see I've used revenue once here. I have analyzed revenue several times here. Okay, so it's the same thing that is running through. So we are going to be guided by this to be creating our measures. So how do we create a measure? So I'm going to add this worksheet tab. I'm going to call this calculations. Okay, so usually when you are building a dashboard, that's the process. After you've done your ETL, you've done your data modeling. Okay, in Excel, we leave one sheet for calculations in an ordered way. Okay, so you can easily generate your measures and so on. Now, as I mentioned, measures are not the numbers sitting in your native tables, but measures can be used across your report. And here again, Power Pivot can help us do that. So if I hit the Power Pivot tab, so it's always here, okay, unless you have some storage issues or you close Excel before closing the window, it goes off. But if it goes off, the same process I used to deactivate, you can use it to bring it back. So under the Power Pivot tab, you see measures, right? So you have your new measure here. Okay, so your new measure is going to start the process. Okay, but let me show you one trick. When you want to create measures, you can store all the measures in one place. Okay, so instead of storing it in a table, right, these are our tables, we can create a dedicated container for our measures. And normally, this is how you do it. You can copy an empty cell. Okay, so I've copied an empty cell here. Okay, then I go to my Power Pivot. Okay, and then this paste is active. So I'm going to paste here. And when I do that, it pops up this dialog box. Okay, so I'm creating an empty table to host my measures. So I'm going to call this my measures, right? And then I'm going to click OK. So when I click OK, you see that I now have another tab here, right? An empty table. Then to make it store my measures, I'm going to select the first column, which is there by default, right click, and then hide from client tools, right? So I just created a special container for all the measures that I'm going to create in this analysis. So I'll close this out. Okay. Now, if I go back and then I start creating a new measure, so this is a new measure. Okay. In the list of tables, I should see my measures here. Okay. Then the first measure we are going to create is to aggregate revenue. So I'm going to call this total revenue. So my measures, total revenue, and you are creating a formula. But what you are creating is a DAX formula. Okay, this is a bit different from the native Excel functions that we have. So I'm going to do sum, okay, call my table transactions, okay, and then I'll go in here and pick the revenue that we calculated. So I'm basically summing or aggregating that column, and then I can select number, check my thousand separator, okay, and then reduce this to 0. I have the option to check my formula before I accept it. So this again is sponsored by Power Pivot, right? So I can click OK, and then I have one measure. Okay, let's add a second measure. So new measure. Now, when you come back, my measures is default because it has now registered its first measure. So here, let me add total cost. Okay, so I come here, sum transactions cost, close bracket. Okay, I'll format my thousand separator. Okay, check my formula to be sure everything is okay, and then I click OK. right? Now, these measures, where are they? You can't see them, but they are stored here. So when I go to manage measures, you see that it is recording all the measures here, right? Now let's add a third one. So the new measure I'm going to create here is to show you that you can create measures from measures, right? So this is going to be like profit. Okay, so I have my profit here. Then I'll go to um, revenue. So here, my old measure here, minus cost. Okay, so I will check thousand separator. I'll check my formula. Everything is fine here, and I'll click OK. Okay, so these measures can now be called from the data model. Okay, so if I'm here, a very simple way I can do this is to insert a pivot table. So if I want to call my revenue to do any calculation or to visualize, I can go to insert pivot table from the data model, which exists in Power Pivot, right? So when I come here, I'll place it in the existing worksheet and I'll click OK. Okay, now this is a typical pivot table. You see how my measures is nicely placed on top. When I expand this, I have all the measures I have created. Okay, so if I check just total revenue, you see that it comes in here nicely. Okay, when I come to another cell and I want to insert my costs, okay, I can use the same process and then I can just bring my total cost. Okay, and then finally, I can also come insert in my data model and then I can bring the profit. Okay, so with this output, you can use it to analyze anything. Now, I mentioned cube functions. Instead of using pivot tables to call these numbers, you can also use cube functions to do this. And again, it is made possible because of Power Pivot. Okay, so there are essentially 7 cube functions. Okay, in this case, we are going to use what we call cube value. Okay, so cube value just asks you for the data model. Okay, you bring your comma, you close this. Okay, and then from your measures, okay, you can bring in your total profit or your total revenue. Okay, so this is one neat way. So when I do this, I get the same thing, and this is how it works smoothly. So you don't have to even go inserting pivot tables and all that, right? So if you're following what we've been doing, you realize that when you go through Power Pivot to do your analysis, you can get a lot of, you know, insights easily, okay, without stretching. Now, let me also demo one key thing that the Power Pivot does for us. If you look at this dashboard, okay, you see that we are able to analyze our data by month. Okay, we are able to analyze our data by month. And to do that, naturally, we'll go to our table. And if there's a column that contains dates, we are going to use this to analyze our data. But you see, it's not really ideal because if you are using, let's say, order dates, right? If you are using order dates, you realize that it skips some days. So if you are doing year-on-year comparison, and let's say didn't happen this year, but it happened last year, this is not going to be useful. So ideally, in the data analytics world, it is good to create a column that has continuous dates. It doesn't skip a date. Okay, that gives you better insight. So we call that the calendar table. Okay, again, in Power Pivot, you can create a calendar table. So let me demo that. So I'll go to my Power Pivot. Okay, and then I'll go to manage. So when I come here, you realize that my transactions are still here. Okay, and then the measures that I did are stored here. Okay, now when I come to design, I see this date table. Okay, so the date table would read the date content of your table. And then when you hit new, okay, it will read the least date, okay, all the way, that's the earliest date all the way to the latest date. Okay, and then create that continuous date that would make it easier for you to create your date, your calendar table, right? So we have our calendar table here. You have your granular dates, you have your year, you have your month, You have your all these ones are available for you to create any date dimension, we call it. Okay. Now remember, when we come to the diagram view, okay, this new table that we have created is not connected to our data model yet. Okay, so it has come in here like this. Okay, and as usual, we have the opportunity to connect any of these days, whether delivery date or order date. It depends. Okay, whatever you want to analyze to this date over here. Okay, so I can take this and then connect it like that and then create a relationship. So usually you can do this in Power Query, but I want to show you that Power Pivot also has that opportunity, or it has that platform to create your calendar table. Of course, and when you come here and then you close out, and then let's say you want to now do an analysis by month, you can come insert your pivot table from the data model, okay, in this existing worksheet. Now your calendar table is here. Okay, so if it is revenue that you want to analyze, Papa, are there any questions?
Yes, you have like 5 minutes more to round up so that we can entertain questions.
That's fine. So this was my last demo.
All right,
So
thank you.
yeah. So if I want to do this, okay, I can just easily create by month. Okay. So usually when this happens, if you sorted it alphabetically, again, I can go to my Power Pivot, okay, go to my manage, and then in my calendar table, we have a month number here. So I can say that sort this month name, okay, by the month number. Okay, so I can sort it by the month number. Now, when I do that, it's going to update and then correct that alphabetical sorting into a chronological one. Okay, so that is simply done. Now, there are a lot of advantages with Power Pivot. Maybe in subsequent sessions, we can see how we can create KPIs. Okay, so KPIs are like conditional formatting, but it's native. Okay, we'll see how we can connect these different slices, okay, to the Power Pivot and all that. But generally, if you are not using Power Pivot, you are really losing out. You are doing a lot of heavy VLOOKUP and all those things. The most important thing is that you have your data normalized, and then you have your dimension and fact tables connected. Power Pivot can give you the calendar part. I also demoed that you can create measures using DAX. And if you like, you can also use cube functions. Okay, there's a lot in here. I'll be honest. This is actually my personal favorite. Okay, that you can use to create financial reports and accounting reports and all those things. So at this point, I think it will be good to see if there are any questions, and then we can answer them as we go. Thank you.
Wow, 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 wow. Bernard,
Yes,
if this
Popola.
is a physical section, I will have
Uh-huh.
asked participants to clap for you, and not only to clap for you, to give you a standing ovation for beautiful presentation.
Thank you. Thank God.
Yes, Bernard, their participants. Bernard, like I mentioned from his introduction, is a Microsoft most valuable person. That's an honor that is not common. That's tied to MVP. I'm also looking up to a day when I will
I'm
get that
waiting.
honor.
Yes, yes. I'm sure you get that very soon.
So, and that honor for participants from Nigeria, we only have 16 of them in the country. Just to tell you that it is not a small honor to have done a very big voluminous work that's community based. And this is Bernard from Ghana reaching out to Nigeria, reaching out to West Africa and Africa as a whole. You have to follow up Bernard. Bernard, let us know your Twitter handle so that you can drop it on the comment side. I will publish it so that people can get to know more of what we are doing. All right. So,
Okay.
participants, yes. You want to show it? Okay, fine.
Yeah, so I'm usually active on LinkedIn. So
Okay,
if you search for Bernard Obeng, um,
okay.
you can find me there.
We
So
will not
you
we
can
will not
follow
miss the
me.
road.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean the name, and then you are good to go. So we can share
Okay,
ideas and then learn. Yeah.
okay, that's fine. Bernard is 24 hours, 7 days online, reaching out to IT enthusiasts across the world. Whoever that is believe that the way to go is to know more about technology and how it helps humanity to solve problems. So, Bernard, we want to thank you so much. In his presentations, he has dwelled more on the power of Excel. Bernard, if you can remember, people
Mm-hmm.
underrate the power of Excel. That
Yeah.
Excel, I know it, I know it. So, but the more you look at Excel, the less you see. Until when you see professionals like Bernard that can take you deep, that look what you say you know, you never know half of it. So, I want to thank you for taking us through the process of Pivot, through the process of DAX. When I got to know about DAX, I didn't get to know DAX from Excel. I got to
Mm-hmm.
know DAX from Power BI. And
Mm-hmm.
it was that point. I said, look, Bobola, look. This DAX we are struggling to understand in Power BI. If you have started from Excel, it will have, because that is the interface that you know more before you come
Mm-hmm.
to know about Power BI. So, and this is the kind of opportunities that we are exposing people to know, that a lot of complex data analytics that we think we are not ripe to use those softwares on the applications, on the tools, that when we start from what we know, which is an Excel, we can migrate from there to the next level. So we want to
And the
thank
truth
you.
and the truth is, I must
Yes,
add just a quick one that this
yes,
data model and Power Query, as it is in Power
yeah,
BI, okay, is
yes,
also similar in Excel. So just to add to what you
exactly.
said. Yeah.
Yes, the interface is similar. And
Yeah.
when we now migrate from what we are used to what we are not used to, the transition is more smoother. So I believe strongly that participants have learned so much from what you have exposed us to, that if we can go more beyond the class, we will get to know the values of what you have exposed us to. We want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for making it a day. So we have about 7 minutes to go. I want to listen to comments or questions. I think I have a few questions. Um, there are lots of positive feedback from people that are listening and watching you. Bernard, somebody said, um, great presentation, Bernard. That's from Prince Boadi. And another person, Taiwo, please keep us posted on the next session for how dashboard and KPI can be treated. Please, this is 10-week event. This is just the seventh. We have past videos of the events. You can download any one of them and watch them. But for subsequent one, the same time, the same weekends, which is Sunday, in the next 3 weeks, you will get us on the same. So we'll be sharing the YouTube links on our pages. um, I also have feedback from Anna. Anna said, I already did good vibes. So maybe we are giving instruction on what they should do and to let you know that they are following. So the only question I have here is from Mohammed. Let me project the question. Hello, Bernard. I forgot to name stores data before loading it to Power Pivot. How do I change it from table 3 to stores in Power Pivot?
Okay. So the the name, I mean, ideally, you should always name the table before you load it. Okay.
Yeah,
But in the event you forget, you can come back to your table, okay, in the table tab, and then
yeah, yeah.
rename it from there, and then it should be fine. In some cases, it should be fine. So ideally, the practice is name it before you load. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
All right. Participants, any other questions? That's the only question I have from Mohammed. Um, all right. Before we close this section, I want to implore all the participants that they should help us to fill the form. It is very, very important that we fill the form. That's the only way we can get our feedback on some of the things that we expect to see in the subsequent editions, and also if there is any area we want us to explore more. So it is only through the feedback we can have this. So the next session will start in the next 4 minutes. Before we go, it is our pleasure and honor to welcome and appreciate and thank our our presenter. Me, I will give you professor, if whether you like it,
Oh, Popola.
whether
You
you
should be coming
like
to
it
Ghana.
or
Oh.
not.
Thank you.
You know,
We thank God.
in a Microsoft platform, a Microsoft
Uh-huh.
circle,
Uh-huh.
MVPs are professors. MVPs are
Oh,
professors.
we do our best. We do our best. It is in serving that we learn. So we keep
Yes,
doing our
yes.
best. Yes.
We
Mm.
thank you guys for giving us the best around the world. MVPs are always at their, at their best anytime they have opportunity to engage humanity. I want to thank you for giving us the best that the world deserves. Thank you so much for having you.
Thank you, Popola. Thank you for this platform, Niger Data
Yeah,
Platform.
yeah,
Yes, thank you. And then hope to catch you on another platform soon.
yeah, definitely. Thank you to our listeners and the people at home. Thank you and God bless. Stay tuned for the next event.